said, well, let's just drive over and see if something's opened up. And so he was parking the car. He says, you go in and see what you can find out. So I'm up at the desk, at the counter with the desk clerk is signing the paperwork when he comes in after parking the car. And I says, we got a room. And all this time they'd been filled up and there was no rooms available. And that happened to us in Vegas, too. We were leaving Death Valley and left early because of the storm coming. And that night it was a night that it was a graduation night where everybody in the towns between Death Valley and Las Vegas was filled up because everybody graduating had their relatives in town, and all the motels were filled, and we couldn't find a place to stay. So we stopped at a gas station for me, and he's talking to the person at the cash register, and he said, well, how's it going? And he says, well, I'd been on the cell phone trying to get us a room in Vegas. And he says, we can't find any room in Vegas. And he said, the person on the counter said, well, just a minute. And they called up a particular place that was outside of Vegas city limits. It was like 30 minutes out. And he gave us directions and said, well, go over here. Well, we went there, and it turned out that somebody just before they called had canceled, so we got the room. So those kind of things can happen that are good, too.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you ever have any visions of things to come? You know, any psychic visions of the future, anything like that ever come to you?
Well, I've had a few. About what's going on now, I had Archangel Michael appeared to me, this was about 30 years ago, and told me that this period of time would be happening. He said it's going to be lots of chaos, lots of disruption. You know, people are going to be really concerned and upset because it's so upset, you know, from what we're used to. It's not the same routines where things are happening, obviously, in our government that are not the normal kind of run-of-the-mill. And he was explaining this was going to happen and the kind of presidents we were going to have while this was going on. And his comment to me that he wanted me to know was that if you stay close to God, if you're in the center of the hurricane, that's called the eye of the hurricane. And that's where the peace and quiet and calm is. It's the people that don't have faith that are out there in all the turmoil and crisis situations. And they're going to be in the storm. But if you stay the closest you can to the center of the hurricane, which is the eye of the hurricane, he says you're going to be okay. It was, to me, a great, great prophecy and information that I could get through this particular situation, you know, that we're going through with our government and so finances and whatever, if I kept in faith. And I've been fortunate enough, you know, that I've been staying pretty rational, calm. I don't get overreactive to some of. I don't watch the news. Let's put it that way.
I don't either.
And so much of it is meant to kind of terrorize us and make us fearful, and it's really kind of reorganizing to come into a new reality is what's going on.
Yeah. Let me say a couple things. One, if an archangel talked to me, I can assure you I would sit up and listen very attentively. Let me tell you. Also, I just want to tell everybody that's watching on Facebook Live to please transfer over onto www.nightdreamstalkradio.com and continue listening to this fascinating guest with great stories. So I'll see you on the other side on the radio. All right, go ahead, Marilyn.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I've been very fortunate. Archangel Michael appeared again to me when I was in Spain. And at the time I was teaching a college class, and I was starting to think and question if I was really on track, because you tend to, when I was early into this, you doubt yourself, right? Is this real? Am I doing the right thing? Is this really what how it's supposed to be? And so I was on a tour in Europe seeing the different places Mother Mary had appeared in Europe with a group called the Edgar Casey Association. And when we got to this particular city in Spain, it was called San Sebastian, and ended up in a Catholic church because of significance that it had. And I'm sitting there in the pew meditating, and all of a sudden this huge, huge energy next to me appeared. Now, when I tried suicide, I knew I had 6 angels, but in those days I didn't know their names, and I didn't know who they were particularly, except there were 6 of them. And so Archangel Michael appeared in Spain next to me, and I'm overwhelmed because the energy is larger than my regular angels are angel energy, and his energy is so profound, and it was so strong. And one of my angels is Eric, and it was male energy. So I says, Eric, and he says, no, it is I, Archangel Michael. I have come to tell you, and he gave me some messages. And I'll tell you, when I do talk to archangels, several of them today, and now it's kind of like I've moved into a higher consciousness, and they don't have to be so strong for me to pick up the message, and it's a little more comfortable than it was. But it was very overwhelming when you first connect in that situation because it's not what you expect at all.
I can imagine. Wow. I mean, it's got to be overwhelming the first time that ever happened to you, I would think.
Well, I started crying. I was totally surprised. And the gal that was sitting next to me, she says, what's happening? And I says, well, when we get back to the hotel, I'll tell you. And so when I came home, I'm an artist, so he showed up in my art studio one day, and he says, I want you to paint my portrait. And I says, I don't know how to paint you, because he hadn't materialized into physical form. It was more like a piece of material that you could see through, like a gauze pot. The best way I could describe it is like cheesecloth. And so I said, how do I paint that? So he says, this is what I want you to do. So anyway, I painted his picture. I have it hanging in my art studio, and he told me how to do it. So it came out like he apparently wanted it, and he's been with me all the time since. I have been really blessed because his knowledge and help has been tremendous for me.
Wow. So is there anywhere that people can see these paintings of the archangels that you've drawn? I mean, are they in your books or a website or something?
Well, that's a good question. I do all the illustrations for my books, and yes, they are in my books. And I do have, on my website, I have artwork that has included some of my angels. In fact, one angel on the website is a male angel, which is actually the angel of Elvis Presley. And I was told that I took the picture to a different spiritual teacher I had at the time. Sadly, he's passed, but he was probably the last of the great mediums that could bring in apparitions and apports and things. And when he saw that picture, he was stunned, and he says, that's Elvis Presley's angel. I know because I've talked with him. And so that picture is on my website along with some other angel pictures. And my angel that is my main angel, Angelica, that's the name of my company. I have a lot of different hats, and so I call on the website, my web name is Angelica's Gifts, and those are spiritual gifts. And so I love painting angels. I also, right now, I'm doing a cat portrait. So, and I've done my grandson pictures and great-grandsons, and I just love to paint. It's when you start putting it on paper, this is, talk about supernatural, they paint themselves.
Oh, wow.
I had, Gabriel, the Archangel Gabriel came in and literally painted his own face on the paper. I was painting an angel one day on a tote bag, and I had the angel pretty well figured out, except I couldn't get it to finish, and I thought, what's going on here? Well, she appeared. She showed up in like invisible form, but she showed up. I could see her. And she had her hand on her hip. They can have a great sense of humor. And she looked at me and she says, haven't you figured it out yet? Because I'd tried blonde hair, and I'd tried red hair, and I'd tried brown hair. And I never thought of this. She says, I have black hair. And as soon as I went for the black paint, the picture finished itself.
Wow, that's amazing. So, also the gentleman you were talking about, who he had seen, he recognized who that angel was. So that was kind of like validation for you that you're on the right track there. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Well, I have gone through development classes, and people have been in the courses, and I've done channeling. And, yeah, I've had a lot of validation at this point. Which is really fascinating for me is that these angels can materialize into physical form. And I've had several experiences where that happened. And I was on a trip to go see my grandchildren in Boise, Idaho, I'm in Washington State, and had a flat tire. And in those days, I was a single woman at the time driving through this place in Oregon that had no stores, no houses, just flat ground, nobody around, period, just the freeway going through it. And here I am stuck on the freeway with a flat tire and being on my own, kind of scared, what's going to happen? I'm not even close to a gas station. So all of a sudden I went into this peace that I cannot explain because I basically was pretty afraid of how I felt stranded. And this little pickup truck, it wasn't a full-size truck, compact truck, pulls up in front of me, and an elderly gentleman called through the window and opened this window, and he says, "Do you need help?" And yeah, I'm stuck. And so he says, "Well, if I take you into," the next town was Pendleton, Oregon, "if I take you into the tire service store there, and they'll come out and fix your tire for you, and you can get on your way." He says, "I have to head off for a job." He had an extra job to supplement his Social Security. He says, "I have to head off for work," but he says, "I'll take you in so that you can get your tire fixed." So lo and behold, I've never gotten in a car with a stranger before. And so I got in the truck, and he took me to Les Schwab, which is a local Western Washington auto store for tires. And the man inside, the snow was coming for the mountains, and I was just on the west side of the mountains, and I'm heading for the east side of the mountains, and it's starting to get into a little bit of late afternoon, and I'm trying to get over the mountains before dark. So I told the man that at the store, and he said, "There's a whole room full of people at that point waiting to get snow tires on and waiting to get their chains on because the snow's coming." And he says, "If you don't tell any of those people I'm taking you next," he says, "I'll fix you up right now." So I went to turn around to thank the little gentleman, and he was gone.
Oh, my.
He wasn't walking out a door. He wasn't anywhere around. He was just gone. And the next day I'm praying about it, and they said, "Well, that was your angel had come because you needed the help." And I've had several situations now where the angels have shown up and actually physically helped me in situations where I was stranded in one way or another. So, I was teaching my classes, and I actually have had angels show up in my class. And at the end of the class, I have a heavy tote bag full of books. I have to bring my own books when I teach because of the books grow legs at this particular place, so I have to bring my own or they won't be there the next week.
Okay.
and it's a pretty heavy book, and I have arthritis, so to walk with these heavy books is difficult. So this fellow said, was a fellow angel in this case, said, "Can I help you?" And I says, "Well, if you carry these out to the car for me, that would be really helpful." So this angel, when he walked through the door for the class, I thought, why is he here? Because he just glowed. He just had this energy around him. He just glowed, and his heart was so good. And he had this huge smile, and he was a really strong, muscular kind of, but attractive-looking guy. And so I turned around from putting the books in the car and to thank him, and again, he's just gone. And I know why he was there at that point. But the point, they show up when we need them in various ways, and sometimes it's really kind of, it's a miracle.
Yeah, sounds like it. And I bet you can look back at different times in your life, and you probably you could probably connect a lot of dots, knowing what you know now and what you didn't know some events that may have happened